So in my last video, I showed you how to knit with the Sashay yarn by Red Heart, but I failed to show you how to cast off when you're finished. So this video, I'm going to show you how to cast off when you're finished with your scarf. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to cast off, and it's actually pretty easy because if you know how to cast off as you would normally knit, then you will pretty much be able to do this very easily. It's a little bit different at the end when you're finishing off that last loop at the end, but I'm just going to show you anyway how to do it. I'm using smaller size needles so I can do this in front of my laptop, so just if you're wondering. Okay, so you're going to knit the first 2 stitches. 1, 2, okay, so once you knit 2 stitches, you're going to take your left needle and you're going to pull that first stitch that you knit. You're going to pull it over the second and off of the needle. Like that. So then you have 1 stitch in your needle. Then you're going to knit the next stitch off of your left needle. And then you're going to pull that stitch from the bottom over the top again. So you're going to do this until you have 1 last loop on your right needle, and then I'll show you where to take it from there. Okay, so I have finished casting off my stitches, and I have this one little loop at the end. Now I'm going to do what the pattern tells you to do, and we're going to sew it in. So you're going to take your thread, needle and thread, try and find a color that matches the yarn you're using. I'm using white, so you just kind of thread it through, and I'm just using a yarn needle so it's easier for you to see. You can use a yarn needle if you want. You can also use a regular sewing needle, it doesn't really matter. And you're going to just try and tack the end, this little loop, to where you bind it off your scarf. So I hope you can see this on camera. But so this is where you cast off your stitches right here. It's where it finished. And you're just going to sew into this. It doesn't really matter where you sew because you're not going to see it, especially if you chose a color that's exactly the same or pretty close to the same as the scarf colors. And I would knot often when you're sewing. Make little knots so that way the thread doesn't come undone. So you can see I'm knotting it every couple of times as I go along so it doesn't come apart. I prefer to sew it across about half of the bottom of the scarf. It's not going to matter really where you put the stitches because it's not going to show anyway. Unless you're a perfectionist and you want it to look perfect, then then just sew the end right there so you don't see the thread at all. And so when you finish sewing, you can just weave in your ends and tie it off. Okay, so when you're done sewing, you have this end at the end of your scarf. It's just a piece of hanging yarn, so you gotta get rid of it. So what I do is I lay out my scarf like this, and I cut it relatively close to where the stitches end on the scarf, but I make sure that it's not too close so that way the whole scarf doesn't come undone, because it can happen. So I cut mine a certain way, and I'm going to show you. So holding the short end, and that's not attached to your scarf, on your left side, I cut it diagonally this way. So let me show you how I do that. Okay. So I cut it close, and I cut it diagonally this way. It's kind of tough to cut sometimes. I don't have the best scissors. And then you can just get rid of your end. And so when you cut it this way and you cut it short enough, it doesn't really stick out that much. So it doesn't really stick out much. Just a little bit. It's not that bad. And then you do that for the other end too. Oops, my stitch marker got stuck. Okay. So I did that for the other end. So that way it doesn't really show. Sorry. I'm not very skilled with the camera. So that's it. That's how you bind off and finish off your sachet scarf. See you next time, guys.